there's so many things that you don't think about, what to say, what not to say, what to do,
right.
What's expected. There's some that they have no idea. All of a sudden there's a cameraman on their boat or a marshal on their boat, and they're like, what do I say? What do I not say?
Yeah. Yeah.
It really helps to get advice from a veteran or a professional that does this to get a little bit of coaching before you get out there.
All right. You've somehow stumbled upon the Fishing Business Podcast. I don't know how you found me, but I'm glad you did. This week, I'm doing something I've never done before, which is kind of flying without a script. Okay. This is what happens when you get a little too busy and you forget that you need to record. What do? You call your buddy, your best friend, and your business partner and say, I need you. Look, Dena Vick is my guest today. We're going to talk about things that we don't even know what we're going to talk about yet, but I guarantee you it will be worth you listening to. Actually, we kind of have a loose idea. But the first thing I want to tell you before we get started is if you're ever in a bind, turn to the people that you know and trust. Don't go to new people when you're in a bind. Go to people that you know and trust, because they will bail you out every time and they'll do a good job. And Dena's a perfect example of that. Dena, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. You might not want to thank me yet. We haven't got this going.
I know you. Okay. So Dena has a company called King Eider Communications, and I call Dena the PR maven, the public relations maven. Dena, what do you call yourself?
Busy.
Right. Me too. She does PR and marketing and strategy and media buying. She does a lot of things. And actually, Dena and I together, I have a company called Fishing Chick Creative, which I do marketing and content development for clients. Together, we work together and partner together on another business called ADD Collective. And what that is a group of professionals within the outdoor industry that we work together and we collaborate together. When one of us has a job, has a client that has a need that they can't fill, we bring the other one in. Sometimes I send work to Dena, sometimes Dena sends work to me, and sometimes we do it together. So we work a lot together. We talk almost every day, and we talk about everything in the fishing industry. Okay, so enough of me talking. Here's what I want to ask you, Dena. How do you think people should react when they do something wrong? When they've made a mistake, especially a sponsored angler or somebody looking for a job in the outdoor industry, how should someone react when they realize I shouldn't have said that, right? Or I owe that person an apology. You have a background in crisis management. This isn't really a crisis, but what do you think people should do?
Well, I guess it really depends on the situation. In most cases, I think you should own it. Own the mistake, own that you misstepped or said the wrong thing. Sometimes though, people don't catch it. So, sometimes you can make it worse if you all of a sudden stumble into that. But I always think it's best to own it. If an apology is needed, apologize. If not, then just say, oh, I got that wrong, or I was thinking about something else, and go from there. But I think it really helps because then you just shot the elephant in the room and you get to go on. And, a thing that I've said over and over again, and I've used it for marketing strategy, social media, but it works also, in public speaking or just in regular communication. And that is fail fast.
Right.
So, we failed. Let's get right on past it and move on.
Well, okay. So let me give you an example. If and this has actually happened to someone that I know. If I'm an angler and I post something on social media that's political, and my sponsors are not happy with me about that. Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit. I mean, talk about why you don't want to, why we should probably avoid politics in general if you're sort of a public person.
Right. Primarily because it's not always about us and it's not about our opinion. And really what happens when we're sponsored, we become a spokesperson for that company. Whether we are an ambassador, an influencer, or a full-blown pro, we become a spokesperson for that company. Their information, their hashtags, their name could be on our clothes, could be on our social media posts, could be on everything. And so at that point, you have to think about the fact that you're representing them. And what your personal beliefs are may not be what their beliefs are and what their stance is as a company. You know, a lot of companies I work with actually have a clause in their contracts that state that you're vanilla,
Yeah.
You could take the stance that they've taken, but really, in my experience, it's best just to keep that clean. Some people have two separate pages or two separate accounts, but they're still linked to you. You have a digital footprint all across the web. And so you will be, and you're linked to it forever. And so you just have to think about that what you say could affect a company in different countries.
Right. That's true.
Ours. It can affect so many things above who we are. And so we just have to remember it's not about us anymore and what we think.
Right. When you represent a brand or even when you represent a company, in my opinion, when you work for someone, but and here's the other thing, Dena, I can hear people listening to this right now, and I can imagine some people saying, oh, well, that's just being politically correct. Mm-hmm. And maybe that is. But in my mind, I'm like, people don't come to fishing to hear your political views.
No. Keep the drama out of fishing. You think about it, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Fishing became that respite. It became that time with your family, with your friends to get away. Leave the computer at home, except for great photos. Leave the phone down, and spend time with your family and just enjoy nature and listen to the birds, catch those fish, and leave the politics and the drama and everything back at the house or the office. And, and that's what we have to think about is that, and sometimes it can be a situation that we have going on in fishing, in the business of fishing, and people want to talk about it because they think that other people want to hear their opinion or they want to rant. And if you think about it, when you're a spokesperson for a company or an ambassador, you're talking about the great things that company can do to make fishing better, right? Make fishing better for the person. Those people have no idea what we are doing in the fishing business. They don't want to get caught up in our issues. And so your audience isn't necessarily just other people that are fishing, in the business. Your audience is the public. It's the new, 40, 50 million anglers out there, and they don't understand what you're talking about.
Right.
So,
that's right.
That's the other thing. You can take the bigger picture before you post. And it's not so much, I've had people say, oh, you're censoring me. And I'm like, you're censoring yourself. Yeah. Okay. Just choose. Does it matter? Will it matter a year from now if you say this? Will it matter 5 years from now? If it is something that's that important to you, then you really need to think about what you're doing and who you're representing and go have a conversation. If not, just leave it.
Okay. What about here? This is slightly switching gears, but kind of along the same lines in some ways. What about if you are seen successfully catching a big fish and you're not using your sponsor's products?
Well,
how do you handle that?
Again, you have to own it because you did it.
Yeah.
You're not trying to cover it up. People that fish understand, it's no big secret here. There is not one magic lure that catches all fish.
Dena Vick, you've got to be kidding me.
Different. That's why that's why everyone has a tackle box, right? With all the different types of products. And so sometimes you're not going to have that one lure or that brand there. I would hope you always would, but you might not. Or what happens with me is that I'll be on a charter boat. I'll be at an event or be on a boat and everyone's fishing and, fish on and you grab a rod and it may be a different rod. It happens and we know it happens. But if you're called out, own it. That's the best thing you can do. Right.
And I mean, I think you cannot try, not to bring attention to it, don't emphasize it, but don't ever not be honest about it.
Right. Exactly. Because people know it happens. And most sponsors, they're not going to like it, but they're going to be okay, especially if you own it. I mean, if it's out there, let them know what happened.
Right. And there's so much, everything's captured these days. Years ago, 15 years ago, we were doing a tournament and we had a guy on camera and he had never been on camera before. And we were in Florida. God, I'll never forget this. And he has a cameraman with him. It's the final day of the tournament. The guy takes off and literally goes around the corner from the launch and the weigh-in site. He literally goes right in the next cove. And that's where he's catching his fish and he's in contention to win. But he sits down, the cameraman starts rolling and he starts going, "Oh man, that was a long run." And we're like, "Oh boy, it took me 30 minutes to get here." He didn't want anyone to know where he was. It wasn't the last day of the tournament. It was the day before the final day. He didn't want anyone to know that he was right around the corner, but we're like, you have a cameraman with you. We know you only went around the corner, and it put us in a terrible situation, terrible situation, because we were like, we have to say we went around the corner, and so the guy probably was not the brightest guy in the world, but that's the other thing too. Everybody, I hear people, I have friends now who will tell me, "I'm not posting this picture because people can see where I'm fishing." And I'm like, you know what? We all know. We know.
Well, and then I know we did not plan this, but I'm going to give a plug for your podcast and everything that you do, because it's so important. And I've done media training for pros before, but especially if you're starting out, even if you're an ambassador, an influencer, or a pro, it's very smart to get a hold of somebody, a coach, like you, to get, just get people to talk to you about things, because there's so many things that you don't think about, what to say, what not to say, what to do,
right,
what's expected. There's some that they have no idea. All of a sudden there's a cameraman on their boat or a marshal on their boat, and they're like, what do I say? What do I not say?
Yeah.
It really helps to get advice from a veteran or a professional that does this to get a little bit of coaching before you get out there.
Yeah, agreed. Okay. I have another one to throw at you.
Okay.
We have a mutual friend who was very passionate about something and in the fishing world, and wanted to make a post that was sort of a rant. Remember this? That was sort of like, what I don't like about this?
Yeah.
And this person came to us and said, "Should I do this?" And we said, "No, don't do that." Again, that could be seen as us saying, be politically correct. But really, talk a little bit about that. Why don't you want to rant?
Well, and there were a couple of things involved, and that goes back to what I was saying a minute ago about we have to know who our audience is. And some people that are super influential in certain groups, new groups into fishing, or groups that are getting larger into fishing. And so they have different audiences, different people following them, people that are new and want to learn, and then other pros.
Right. Brands,
things like that. And so I'll give you a little tidbit with that too. One, don't rant, but even if you're doing a video or something, watch what you're wearing.
Yeah.
Because if you're wearing a sponsor shirt or hat and you don't even think about it, it's as if they're supporting you in this rant.
That's right.
Don't do that. But the other thing is that remember, your ultimate audience, if you were sponsored, are the public and the people fishing, consumers that are fishing. So you're trying to help them, and they don't know anything, like I said earlier, about any drama or any situations that we deal with on the fishing industry side.
Right.
And I guess if there are private, and I'm going to use air quotes because nothing is private.
Right.
When you're talking about the web and digital and social, I don't care if it's a group on Facebook, I don't care what it is, nothing is really private. Okay.
Right.
But if it's a private industry group, and then you're able to, that's what it's there for ranting and talking and discussion. It could go there. Right. But I wouldn't do a video because that video can be shared.
Right.
So just, but you don't want to rant because you don't know who your audience is.
Well, and not only that, look, here, I never recommend ranting for any reason. Honestly, if you looked at my social media, my personal channels, I just try very, very hard not to say anything negative because there's enough of that out there. I don't want to be part of that funnel of negative things. I certainly don't want to go looking for a fight. And I don't recommend anybody else go looking for a fight, because there's enough of that. It'll come to you. If you really want it, it'll come to you.
Now, we'll say back in the day, one of the social media strategies was to post a controversial question or a controversial statement because it got more people talking, more people sharing. It could go viral and it could really get your numbers up. But I do not recommend doing it that way. I mean, if it's controversial, like is the best color, fishing in Panama City, copper penny or blue. Okay, with that. But
that's controversial enough.
Yeah, we could go with that. But anything truly controversial, there are much better ways to boost your numbers.
Yeah, right. And plus, when you see, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. They were telling me they had a video that went viral, and they got a lot of followers from it, but they weren't good quality followers. Because they just saw that one thing and then they never interacted with them again. Okay. And sometimes when you see somebody with a lot of followers, that's just, they have a lot of followers. They don't have a lot of fans. They just have a lot of followers. So, and that's not always valuable. All right, Dena, what else can we share our knowledge about when it comes to this sort of thing? Are we done?
Well, one, because this happens to me because I'm not so young anymore. And sometimes, especially on stage, your memory can fail you.
Oh, yeah.
And you forget the sponsor. You don't thank somebody, or you go blank and you can't think of the name. And then there's just that awkward silence, or you say the wrong thing. When that happens too, I think it's best to say, I'm sorry. I don't want to say the part. But, that happens to people a lot of times. And sometimes you can just change the subject. Sometimes if you're being interviewed, they'll help you.
Yeah. Right.
But that one happens quite a bit. And
where you misspeak.
You misspeak, or you forget, or you leave a sponsor out.
Yeah. Right.
So sometimes, you always want to list your sponsors, but you really need to have that going because it happens, especially when you've got a microphone in front of your face.
Well, and I would say if you were on stage and you forgot to mention someone, even at a local event, you forgot to mention someone important, everybody understands that. I think you just make the call. You call them up. You be proactive about it and own it, like you started by saying, and just call them up and say, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry, but I forgot. I just simply forgot. And I was trying to remember everybody, and just be as genuine and authentic as you can be and sincere. And people get it, And
another thing you can do is have a screenshot or a picture of you up there on stage and say, "Hey, everybody, for those that didn't see it, these are all my great sponsors I wanted to thank."
Yeah, right.
Or, do a post. Don't say you forgot, but, just throw it out there because that's probably going to live longer than
right.
You were on
That's
stage.
Right. So you make it up to them. You figure out a way to make it up to them. But that leads me to another question. How valuable is it for a guy to just reel off his sponsors on stage?
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No, I don't. And they don't have that much time either.
Right.
But I know we've all watched them up there and just this one.
Yeah.
And,
it just becomes jibber jabber.
Right. And there are a couple, I wish I could think of the names of them. See, I'm doing it now on the spot, forgetting. But, I've seen a lot of guys and girls that are great at, I think Christine has done this before, which is really good.
Christine Fisher.
Christine Fisher, she'll say, she was using a Z-Man jackhammer to get into this little spot, and they're really hitting that. And, she gives some instances about what she was doing, or that rod really had backbone. I could get through the weeds, or, she's pretty good at putting a narrative to it.
Right.
Making it, making it sound natural, but Christine is so natural.
Mm-hmm.
that's just the way she is. That's the way she talks. And,
So I tell people a lot when I'm coaching clients, I'll say, okay, listen to this. You know how in NASCAR you see the guy that wins and he's got this hat on and they take pictures and he takes it off and he puts this hat on and they take pictures and he goes through all of his sponsors on his hat when he's winning, because winning is such a big deal, But I'm like, think about it that way with your sponsors. This week, tell a story about this sponsor. Put it into context of what you did that day, or that week, but make sure it's within the context of what you're doing, because that's relevant and it means something to people. Next week, do it with your other sponsor. The next week after that, use another sponsor. Maybe you do 2 at one time. Maybe you say, I really needed my, Minn-Kota trolling motor this week because X, Y, and Z. But to me, that just seems like it's so much more valuable when you put it into the context of why it worked for you.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, Dena, I think that's it, honey. Thank you so much for being here for me today. I appreciate it. And I'm going to, of course, have you back and we'll think of some more good stuff to talk about.
Thank you.